Jimin will likely go through a very difficult time at the age of around about 35. It's at this time that he may well meet someone and marry. I do actually think he'll end up having two children. He thinks very little of himself. He has a second family ring. Good hello, and thank you very much for watching this Sunday case study on Jimin, the BTS band member. Thank you very much for all of your comments recently and the army descending onto my channel and requesting this reading. Please do keep all of your comments coming in. They are thoroughly appreciated, and I take on board absolutely everything that everyone says. Now, when I looked at Jimin's hand, I have to say I something made me feel uncomfortable. And I couldn't at first I couldn't figure out what it was, and then it hit me, and it hit me hard, and it still does, in fact. To get where he has in life, he's had to make tremendous sacrifices, as I'm sure all of the BTS have. But in particular, his loving relationships, he's really missed out in terms of love. He needs love. He's a sensual and analytical hand. This means that he is highly charismatic. He is charming. He has a real strength of personality. The overall thickness of all of the fingers shows the strength, force of personality, and also talents as well. He's a remarkably talented individual. The thickness of the Mercury finger in itself is, of course, the elephant in the room, and it's something I will be addressing. It is so-called short, but it isn't actually short, and I know this because in palmistry, a true palmist recognizes the length of the Mercury finger by offsetting the overall length with the bottom two phalanges of Apollo. Now, this secondary little line here that I created is in fact a duplicate of this here. I've just turned the angle of it. And you can see that it is in fact longer than the bottom two phalanges of Apollo. It is in fact way longer. His Mercury finger is not short, but it is of course very low set. This is one of the signifiers, one of the indicators around his emotional psychology. Each of the fingers represents an aspect of our psychology, and it being so low set is very common with people who have gone to boarding school, whose parents were too busy working and provided a nanny. They didn't have the necessary bonding relationships, those crucial emotional nourishment between parent and child in those crucial years. He has missed out essentially and is searching for love to make up for the lack of love that he should have had in his youth. Now, this is very common with tremendous achievers, with those who achieve a great amount very young. Michael Jackson had the same thing in his hands. It's created something of he's emotionally reserved. He's not as able to articulate and understand his emotions, and he's very sort of shy and hesitant, and really requires privacy and isolation. And this is also backed up by the fact that we have a very long Saturn finger. Now, you could say, well, actually, is it long, or is it that Jupiter is very short, uh, as is Apollo not all that long? You might be right. The effect is still the same, though. Jupiter is short. His ego is reduced. He doesn't think that much of himself. His self-worth isn't all that great. Despite his tremendous success, he has a sense of inadequacy about himself, and each time he completes a goal, rises to a new level in some way, he kind of finds an excuse not to reward himself, not to accept praise. The length of the Saturn finger shows us a few things and backs up what we see in the Mercury finger as well, because it shows us that notice how the Saturn finger is highest of all the fingers. It is long, and it's showing us that his priorities are in materiality, cultivating investment, security, traditional values, but most of all, home and the family. Everything that Jimin does is for his family, is for love, is for the validation that he needs from his family because he missed out on a lot of that when he was young. So he's kind of compensating for a lot of what he missed out on. And this is partly why it hit me so hard when I read his hands. I took some notes this morning and I became increasingly more upset the more I looked at his hands. There's a feeling I get here and it hits me in the gut because there's it's not that he was neglected or abandoned or anything like that, but he really there were times in his life when he was young, when he really needed a hug, and no one was there to give him that. He was too busy working on his career. And that again is a fundamental of Saturn as well. Duty, societal contribution, the inevitable planning, and of course career. So what we see here in his psychology is everything. He's given everything of himself in order to provide and 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 find a sense of peace and security and validation from that which he upholds uh, on his list of priorities most, family. Now, the widened second phalanx of Mercury that we see here, which I'm sure has been talked about a lot in palmistry, this could mean one of a few things. Now, Mia Bashir, the legendary Indian palmist who taught my mentor, in fact, Terry Stokes worked alongside him when he was very young for a number of years. Mia Bashir would say that this is an over focus on materiality, on gaining wealth, and it is someone with a good aptitude for business, a good mind for business, and enjoys making money and becoming successful. And if this is the case, and I'm sure there's some truth to it, it is in some way a compensatory measure. And he's doing it for his family, he's doing it for love. In many respects, this is the hand of a business person, absolutely. But he is a sensual and analytical hand type. He's a mix of both of the two of these very complex hand types. If you want to know more about my 12 hand types, please do look at my website, my 12 hand classification method on my blog. Sensual hands are highly social, personable, charismatic, and charming. And he's all of those things. Analytical hands are very introspective and, of course, like the name, analytical. He is both of those things as well. He's a deep thinker. This can be seen by the sheer length of the thumb. And the thumb itself actually provides us with an overall um, personality. It's an amalgamation of all of what we see in the psychology of the fingers. And here we see a genuine, loving soul. This is someone who requires love. And of course, we all do, don't we? But my wish for Jimin here is that he takes time to reflect on himself, to introspectively analyze his own needs and desires, and not to give. He's a giver. He's a big giver. Not to give to that which does not serve him. And I actually want him to be a bit more selfish. The fact that the Mercury finger swings very far away from the rest of the fingers shows us he is a very private person. He requires space. And it's really important that those closest to him in both loving and work relationships realize, recognize this boundary and respect this boundary. Being a sensual hand, he's very physical. And as a result, he understands the physical. He's analytical when it comes to the physical details. The fingertips and the fingernails show us how we receive and respond to information pertaining to these individual aspects of our psychology. Mercury here is communication and expression. And it's short, it's fan shape. I can appreciate it's not a very clear image, but it's short, it's a short nail, and it's very fanned out, it's almost triangular. And this is someone with an explosive and very quick, responsive, expressive capacity. He is someone who is very physical in this way, very physically expressive. Saturn leans in towards Apollo, and again, this is a sign of someone who is conscientious, who is considering others. As I say, he is a giver. The extreme angle of the thumb here, I expect you will see with all of the BTS members, and this is known as the angle of proficiency or the angle of time. It is both, and in fact, it shows an immense sense of timing. Now, it's often kind of speculated. I've seen on online things floating around him having small hands. I'm not sure I agree with that. The length of his whole hand corresponds to the length of his face, as it does with all of us. And it also corresponds to his height, as it does with all of us. Anyone who you suspect or believe has a short or small hand, maybe they do, but they also have the corresponding face length and height. And a short hand, a small hand, it shows someone who is quick to respond, physical, efficient, someone who has an ability to just get the job done, to assess things very quickly and just to get the job done. Now, he's a bit more complicated than that because he's also analytical. So, whilst he's physical, whilst he's efficient and quick to respond, there is an ability here to break down and process and look at all of the details, but do it very quickly. This is exactly the kind of hand you would expect. This is a hand of a martial artist. This is a hand of a dancer. And I have to say that given what he's been through, the sacrifices he's made, the struggles that he's been through to get where he is a fighter. And I can't help but feel uh, admiration. That's what I feel for this person. Admiration, sympathy, but most of all, I'm amazed at how he's gotten where he is and has the health of the state of his psychology is very healthy considering what he's been through. The kind of the pinched in effect that you see on the middle phalanges of the fingers is always seen, and you even see it even on Mercury after the widened second phalanx, it kind of pinches in a little, but not so much. This shows a feeling of a lack of emotional support when young. It's always seen in on the hands of people who have had many, many brothers and sisters, and they've had to kind of muck in from an early age and lost out on their childhood, and there's not enough of the parents to go around almost. And the reasons for this, they corroborate with what I've already mentioned about that low set Mercury finger. There wasn't enough emotional bonding. There was a lack of bonding and love, essentially, when he was young. It's not that he was neglected, but there's certainly a feeling there of abandonment and potentially abandonment issues. Now, my worry here is that he will compensate for this in an unhealthy coping mechanism and search for love in the wrong places and give too much of himself to that which doesn't serve him, to those that don't deserve it. What I wish for this person is for them to take time to give to themselves, to be selfish, to do what's right for them for a while, to actually retreat somewhat from it all and just learn about themselves and love themselves and grow and develop before attempting to find a meaningful and loving relationship. And you know what? I actually think that is what will happen. And I can't help but feel he will become a devoted and emotionally very aware, very loving parent. And in this way, he will heal himself in the process of just becoming a wonderful father. Um, and I think that will happen at around about now. It's pretty arbitrary here, but I would think this happens at around about the age of 35. Now, this corresponds with what we see on the Lifeline right here. There's a bit of a bit of a lump in the throat here. There's a bit of an island here. I literally get that feeling when I see this because it's a very stressful time. It's a very difficult time. And it's a time where he's going to make some changes. There may well be some travel at this time. I do believe he will have 2 children. However, this is a few years off yet for him, and the lines in the hand can and do change, particularly the minor lines. Here is a family ring, as well as here. These are both family rings, and they both provide us with some insights into children. And I believe he will have 2 children. Islands show up in the form of children on the family ring on the thumb. Why? Islands are generally associated with bad things. struggle, stress. Well, that's because children keep us up at night, and they are, it's difficult. It's not easy. There's no rule book, and it it's a stressful time. It's a time of upheaval, and ultimately, it's a good thing, of course. Now, I am getting ahead of myself a little bit because I did want to mention there's a tremendous rise up from his lifeline. Now, the lifeline itself, when you look at it, it's very straight. And actually, its origins come from high up on Jupiter itself. And this is always seen in the hands of ambitious people who have this is his right hand, so this is a very practical material representation of that rise to a new status, a new achievement, an ambition achieved. But the thing is, this effort line here, and that's what this is, an effort line, and it's at the age of, I'd say, 23. It doesn't rise further than the headline. Now, this is the right hand, so you'd expect to see an ambition that has been fulfilled in a very material, environmental, physical, external way. You'd expect to see that rise up onto Jupiter itself. What this means is that, in fact, it hasn't fulfilled a sense of an enrichment in himself. He still has a reduced sense of himself, which is quite remarkable. And in a way, it's a very powerful thing because he's not got an overinflated opinion of himself. He's not let it get to his head. But at the same time, he's not enjoying those rewards. He's not allowing it to, he's not taking the praise, taking the compliment. He's not allowing himself to do that. And that's what that means. It hits the headline and goes no further. So whilst it's a powerful rise, change, and achievement, it's not affecting himself in any dramatic way. Now, take a look at the fate line here. This is quite remarkable. To me, there aren't a great deal of lines in this hand altogether. And and really what that tells us is that on the surface now, I see this on the hands of a lot of people who have very physical jobs. He's a very physical person. But really on the surface, that they people with that kind of general Palmer feature reveal themselves as very simple in terms of their character, their desires, what they want and need in life. They present themselves as non-complex. But underneath, there is a very, very complicated emotional makeup. I suspect that he is very capable of self-reflection, but hasn't perhaps yet had the time to do that. And it's just not on his list of priorities. Now, the faint fate line that we see rising up towards Saturn here is on the right hand. This is telling of the fact that despite his meteoric success and achievement in life at such a young age, he doesn't feel a great sense of satisfaction from the work he's doing. He doesn't. If perhaps he were more able to accept praise and give that to himself, to enrich his own sense of self-worth, perhaps then he would have a greater sense of satisfaction about what he's doing. Perhaps he feels that no matter what he does, it's still not enough. That's what I'm getting here. There's a lack of satisfaction. There's almost a lack of purpose. It's like he feels as though this isn't his purpose in life. Now, the faint fate line shows us actually he has a great deal of ability to carve his own destiny. Now, many of us don't have that. Much of his road ahead is totally undecided, and he will have that ability to decide for himself. Notice the lifeline, the straightness of it. It shows this, as I've already mentioned, a very sort of bold approach, and it courses towards a very single focused purpose, but then it seems to kind of stop. The left hand shows the lifeline being a lot longer, inherently, of course. This is not a sign of, his life ending at this time, because the lifeline on the left hand, as well as many other features combined, show a very healthy individual and the prospect of a longevity and great vitality and immune system. No, what this shows us is that in fact his fate, as well as his fate line, as it reaches 50 and then kind of stops. His lifeline here reaches, actually it's deceptive because of the angle, is 60 and then stops. It's showing that the road ahead for him is completely undecided. You can clearly see the lifeline here on the left hand reaches much further than, so that's about 60. So it's still, things are still undecided. The resets, however, and that's these little wrist lines right here, are also an indication of longevity. In medieval palmistry, these were said to provide 25 to 30 years of life. Again, I mean, I don't. You can never really diagnose from one sign or symptom alone in the hands, and medieval palmistry is not all that accurate. As well as that, the lines in the hands change all the time, so it's really silly to try to determine anything more past the age of 60 for this person. It's just absolutely pointless. Now, I have to say, for me, one of the more positive aspects of his hand here, and this really filled me with relief. That's the word I'm looking for. Filled me with relief because we see here's the family ring. As I've already mentioned, there are two family rings in the palms, and the one is on the thumb here. Now, there's a second one. This is his left hand. It's internal. It's his feelings about family, and family, as we know, as we've already recognized, are one of his core values, one of his core principles. The second family ring here, and it attaches itself. Now, as I've mentioned, he is in some way searching for the love that he missed out on as in youth because he was so furiously working towards his future career. He's made great sacrifices, and he's searching for camaraderie, companionship, relationship, love, and he's found it in his second family, his BTS brothers. And I find this just so wonderful to see. Now, I'm fully aware that Jimin is a fully grown man, but I can't help but look at his hands and I see a boy, I see him frozen in time because it's almost like in some ways he cannot move past the point in time where he is in need. I still see someone who needs a hug. That's what I see, and that's why it kind of cut me up a little bit when I fully recognized what these hands were trying to tell me. Now, I also recognize a lot of you know a great deal more about this person than I do, and you may well disagree with a lot of what I'm saying, and that's absolutely fine. I'm just trying to interpret what I see in the hands and from the hands alone, really. And I see a very genuine, very giving soul, a very loving soul who requires, in a very physical sense, love. He needs a hug, quite literally. This is a very tactile, um, this is someone who shows love, great deal of PDA, and is a big giver. Notice the space here between the head and the heart line, the the arc of the heart line. It's deep, it's powerful. The capacity seen within the space above the heart line. If you were to make a bow out of this shape here, it would be a powerful one. Cupid would be able to fire an arrow far. And that's really, and it's kind of a silly analogy, but in a way, it's my own way of kind of recognizing the capacity for someone's ability to feel, to love and be loved. I absolutely wish all the best to this person, and I do hope sincerely that they take the time they need to self-reflect and do some inner work before finding um, and searching for a meaningful, loving relationship, a partner. And as I've said, I do think that will happen. I cannot say this enough. Really, credit to him for everything. In terms of health, I can see that in just about all of the images, the fingertips are very reddened, and this shows potentially high blood pressure. And in this image here, you can see the headline here. You can see it in all its glory. It's very long, and that alongside a long Mercury finger, because although contrary to popular opinion, his Mercury finger is long. It's low set, um, certainly low set but it is long. In conjunction with a long headline such as this, because it reaches right underneath Mercury itself, the place of learning, calculation, skills, logic, communication, and expression, memory. This shows a high IQ. But notice how the headline kind of dwindles off, it kind of peters out very faintly and whispery into a kind of fair. This fainting, this fading of the headline shows us a deficiency in potassium, and it's very common indeed. But one of the effects of this is, well, there's several symptoms of this. One of them is the propensity towards depression. It can cause depression, low potassium, cramps, fatigue, muscle weakness, that sort of thing. That's all very common, and it's, it's not all too difficult to kind of sort this out. But then also I notice this kind of these wispy little lines here, and it's almost like there's an attempt here at a girdle of Venus, but it's not quite. What we see here is, and this is also the risk of potassium deficiency, is a greater risk of cardiac. What do they call it? Arrhythmia. It's an abnormal heart rhythm, essentially. So there is a slight kind of risk here forming, it seems, in his hand. It's the right hand, so it's very physical, it's external, of an abnormal heart rhythm. Perhaps that's already something that's there anyway. So my heart quite literally goes out to Jimin, and I do hope that he focuses on his own heart, quite literally and figuratively. Please do let me know your thoughts. Thank you all so much for watching. Please keep your comments coming in. Please let me know who you'd like me to read the hands of next Sunday. I read the hands of famous people every Sunday. Please let me know if you have any questions. And if you'd like me to read your hands, please do visit my website and book a palm reading with me. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.